Greetings, and welcome to this virtual Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Waynesboro for February 28th, 2021. I'm Tom Engel. I've been a member of the fellowship for a couple of years, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to this service. All are welcome to this service, including any non-members of the fellowship watching this video. Someday we'll resume in-person Sunday services, and I hope you'll come visit the fellowship on Pine Street once we're able to. Here's a reading to open the service. It's called Come Whoever You Are by Marilyn Falkowski. We welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our fellowship, in our local community, and in our world community. I liked that message because it touches on several valuable Unitarian Universalist principles. In particular, I thought it related to the third of our 7 guiding principles, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, and the fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Here we are already 2 months into the new year, and there are definitely some things to be hopeful and optimistic about. I, for one, enjoy not having to start each day wondering what divisive outrage will emerge from our national leadership that day. At the same time, our nation remains very divided, and many people face hardships of one kind or another. If you can bear in mind the inherent worth and dignity of every person and encourage each other's searches for spiritual growth, truth, and meaning, it will help add energy to the positive trends of the day. Now, as we prepare to light the chalice, here's some more positive words of welcome on a similar theme. This reading is called Welcome Home by Rachel Rott. Welcome, you questioners, seekers of truth with a capital T, pilgrims longing for sanctuary, travelers needing harbor from the storm. Welcome those who are holding on by a thread, determined breakers of the chains of loneliness and isolation. You pushed through your fear because something told you that you deserve to belong. Welcome home. Welcome those who braid ropes again and again. You've been there for our siblings who were just hanging on. You gave them a hand into community and told them they could rest here. Welcome, you who seek spiritual and religious community for your children and grandchildren. You entrust your young people here, and we, as a community, commit to nurture and respect them. Welcome, children and youth. You give us the gift of your wisdom, your joy, your curiosity, and your trust that we will hold all of it safe. Welcome. Welcome home. How do we make this tender place wider? How do we stretch into a bolder welcome, a radical generosity of the heart? Can we imagine ourselves the stewards and ushers not only into this space, but into our circle of belonging? Can we commit and recommit to being accountable to one another as an anti-racist, anti-oppressive community that centers marginalized voices, that listens to those voices, especially when what they are saying is hard to hear? Can we be willing to change? When we break our agreements with one another, can we offer amends? Can we be humble and generous? There is grace enough here. There is, in this place, the possibility of healing, of repair, of making things right, within ourselves, between us, and within the wider world. There is, in this place, possibility. Welcome home.
In our individual lives and in our life together as a community, there are milestones that we celebrate and take great joy in. We always hope and pray for many of these. But there are also mile markers that force us to pause, to stop what we're doing, to look up from our daily tasks and remember memorializing something really big, something somber, something wrenching, indeed something horrible. This past week, we passed 500,000 verified dead in the United States alone from COVID-19. 500,000 have died in this country from this single new cause within the span of a single year. That is beyond the ability of most of us to comprehend. It is overpowering. It is too large to keep perspective on. Consider that if buried all together, this 500,000 would fill as large a cemetery as Arlington National Cemetery. It is more than we lost in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War combined. On Monday, President Biden led the nation in memorializing this massive loss. Among his words at that memorial are these: "Each day, I receive a small card in my pocket that I carry with me in my schedule. It shows the number of Americans who have been infected by or died from COVID-19. Today, we mark a truly grim, heartbreaking milestone: 500,071 dead. But as we acknowledge the scale of this mass death in America, we remember each person and the life they lived. They're people we knew. They're people we feel like we knew. Read the obituaries and remembrances. The son who called his mom every night just to check in. The father's daughter who lit up his world. The best friend who was always there. The nurse who made her patients want to live. We often hear people described as ordinary Americans. There's no such thing. There's nothing ordinary about them. The people we lost were extraordinary. They spanned generations, born in America, immigrated to America, but just like that, so many of them took their final breath alone in America. As a nation, we can't accept such a cruel fate. While we have been fighting this pandemic for so long, we have to resist becoming numb to the sorrow. We have to resist viewing each life as a statistic or a blur on the news. And we must do so to honor the dead, but equally important, to care for the living and those left behind. Members of this fellowship have heard me several times repeat the ancient Jewish wisdom that to save a life is to save the whole world. Because each and every life contains whole worlds of possibilities and directions. The world, the entire world, is never the same after any death. Entire possible futures of human potential leave us with each death, and all humanity is the poorer. Last week, Jennifer Lewis contacted me to ask if the fellowship lawn would be available to set up a memorial here to those who died right here locally because of COVID. She had planned to set this memorial up on the Greenway. Initially, she had received a positive response from Parks and Recreation, but when she went back to finalize things, a higher-up had intervened and nixed it because, in that person's opinion, it was political. Too political to allow on the Greenway. A simple memorial with a modest sign and a flag for each local person who died of COVID a local official found remembering the dead too political. I gladly agreed to Jennifer's request, and on Thursday she and I met at the corner of Pine Avenue and 14th Street to set up this simple, modest installation remembering Waynesboro's dead. Jennifer explained that because it had been planned for the Greenway, the sign and flags represent only Waynesboro people who have died in the pandemic. But we have additional signage to represent Stanton and Augusta County, and we'll add those and a white flag for each one who died from those parts of our local area as soon as the signs are ready. The reporting of the Virginia Department of Health on Friday showed that 29 Waynesboro people, 62 Stanton people, and 56 Augusta County people have died of COVID-19. Let us hold these local people and our full national 500,000 people who have died in this pandemic in our hearts in a moment of silence. Amen. Our surge is retreating, but our time of uncertainty and loss is still with us. I hope you are soon able to get your COVID vaccinations. Our Director of Religious Education, Sarah Scarr, and I have both had our first dose and are looking forward soon to getting our second. Let's all do our part to knock this thing back and speed up the possibility of returning to normal. Our words of prayer this morning pertain to disrupted family life in these times and is written by Sarah Goodman. Many of you have the raising of children behind you. Some are still raising children. Others of you are involved with children other than your own children, helping them grow and flourish. This prayer speaks to something in all our lives, whether we have children or not. This is a prayer for parenting in a pandemic, a prayer for the dirty laundry and the piled up dishes, a prayer for dance parties and cuddle puddles, for long walks and improvised science experiments, for screen time as education and distraction. This is a prayer for working parents, Zooming another meeting with a little face joining in, for new parents, waiting for new life without support, for the single parents, doing all this alone. A parent cradles the head of a toddler wearing pink footy pajamas. For parents who are on the front lines and essential workers who worry every day about being away from home, about bringing something home, about holding it all together as you hold the world together. This prayer is for the more than 2,000 meals you've made, for the 100 millionth time you've heard, "Can I have a snack?" For the 5 minutes of alone time you can squeak out of every day. For the 2, 4, 6, 60 gray hairs you've acquired so far. This is a prayer for the meltdowns, the missed naps, the many, many tears, the distance learning homework no one wants to do but still somehow feel the need to fight about. This is a prayer for wondering if they will ever fall asleep, for wondering if they will ever get up, a prayer for pretending that you're enjoying yourself while you all play their favorite game. This is a prayer for all the missed milestones, for holding your child as they cry over missing their friends, missing their prom, missing their graduation, for your own tears, because you can't fix this problem. This is for all the milestones marked, the public birthday party parades, the Zoom proms hosted by celebrities, the family celebrations of learning to walk, the first lost tooth, the private, personal celebrations of the many ways you've watched your children grow and mature right close up. This prayer is for all the newly formed family bands and midday pajama-clad dance parties, for all the backyard bathing, for the new trampolines, new bikes, new play structures. A prayer for inside obstacle courses and learning to make new crafts, for all the pets that have joined new families. This is the prayer for bonding and breaking, for togetherness and too much togetherness. This is a prayer for love, for anger, for grief, for time out of time. This is a prayer for parenting in a pandemic. Amen. And now let us hold all the unspoken joys and sorrows of this congregation and of our community in our hearts quietly.
The Web of Life by Robert T. Weston. There is a living web that runs through us to all the universe, linking us with each and through all life on to the distant stars. Each knows a little corner of the world and lives as if this were his all. We no more see the farther reaches of the threads than we see of the future, yet they're there. Touch but one thread, no matter which. The thoughtful eye may trace to distant lands its firm, continuing strand, yet loses its filament as they reach out, but find at last it coming back to him from whom it led. We move as in a fog, aware of self, but only dimly conscious of the rest, as they are close to us in sight or feeling. New objects loom up for a time, fade in and out. Then, sometimes, as we look on unawares, the fog lifts, and there's the web in shimmering beauty. Reaching past all horizons, we catch our breath, stretch out our eager hands, and then in comes the fog again, and we go on, feeling a little foolish, doubting what we had seen. The hands were right, the web is real. Our folly is that we so soon forget.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
Hi, so it's me again. My name is Linda Shalish, and I'm talking to on behalf of the Social Justice Committee and the UUFW. Just take it as your Lenten penance that you have to listen to me again. But I'm pretty much consumed by the thought of the eighth principle lately. And so last time I spoke about the eighth principle, I tried to deconstruct it for you. And let me just tell you again what the eighth principle says. It says, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and to promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So, just to refresh your memory. So in the blender of my mind, I have come across several things, reading about the eighth principle and reading in general about racism and anti-racism. And in this week's newsletter, Florence, Steve Maxwell has an article, and also Florence, in Florence's newsletter, there's a question that says, how does the eighth principle inform my actions? So I'm thinking about that. I'm going to try and answer that question. So here goes nothing. One of the things that I noticed is that I was reading a book my daughter sent me. It's the Blue Book. It's the AA Blue Book. And one of the quotes in it is very interesting. And I actually have a copy of it on my wall. So let me get sophisticated here and see if I can show it to you. Okay, so here it is. It says, watch your thoughts for they become words. Watch your words for they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. And your habits become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. What we think we become. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you was a clip of a video. It's New York Public Library's Schomburg Center, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. It was a program that was presented last night, and it's Hilton Alls from the New Yorker, and he's interviewing Charles Blow, who's a columnist for the New York Times. Charles Blow just wrote a book called The Devil You Know, which seems to be something that I should read next. So
it's fascinating. It's fascinating what you say about those numbers, because one of the points that you raise in the book that I'm sure that there will be a lot of controversy about is white participation in Black Lives Matter, and how the protests began and then they stopped. As if the problem is solved or people move on to the next issue. So let's talk a little bit about this, the idea and reality of white liberalism as a Band-Aid for other white liberals, actually. Does it work? Does this kind of meeting between the races ever produce anything constructive for Black lives?
Well, I will start by saying, do I believe that people experience racial conversions and grow out of racism in moments like that? Some people do, and that is good for them. But the liberation of Black people cannot be dependent or contingent on your growth. Mm-hmm. It simply cannot, because that puts Black people in a pleading position, trying to get you to draw you out of the cave. I don't want that. But the other thing is, there is a fickleness to it. There is also a part of it that is not genuine. At the height of stop and frisk, Quinnipiac used to ask the residents of New York City, they asked several times, you know that there's negatives to this, are you still okay with it? Every single time, a majority of white people in New York City said yes, they were fine with it, right? And the reason is that this is a hard concept for some people to get their heads around. Being a liberal does not make you a racial egalitarian. These are not completely overlapping circles. I can be in favor of stopping climate change and a woman's right to choose and gay marriage and still not be a complete racial egalitarian, still in some ways be a white supremacist, still not completely believe that people are just people. If you give all of them a shot, they're all going to be perform in pretty much the same ways. But people think like, oh, because we have museums and art, and gay people, can live a relatively open life, and we have, I carry up Right. And I carry a bag to the grocery store, so I won't use plastic.
Mm.
That means that the race problem goes away. No, it doesn't.
Okay, so that's really all I wanted to say. And how does the eighth principle inform my actions and my behavior? And one of the things it does is to make me want to look at, to educate myself, like the Poor People's Campaign says, to educate, right? To move, organize, and register to vote and educate. So it informs my thinking and what I need to think about, what I need to read, and what I need to listen to. So whatever you put into the blender in your head, it informs what comes out in your actions. And so you have to start somewhere, right? So I think that this is where I'm starting. I don't know where it's going to lead. I don't know what it's going to make in the end. And like the eighth principle says, it's a journeying. It's a journey. It's a process. So you can only, your behavior is only informed by what you put into your head, right? So this is what went into my head. And I wanted to share it with you. So thank you for listening. You've done your Lenten penance. So ego te absolvo in nomine Patris, etc. All right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Linda, for taking up the question posed in the newsletter concerning the proposed eighth principle of our association. The question, how will the eighth principle inform my behavior? It is both a personal question and a communal one. The proposed eighth principle calls on all parties to the covenant that includes the principle to work to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. If I hope to know how this will inform my personal and our congregational behavior, I need to have a baseline understanding of how my actions or our actions impact systemic racism and other systemic oppressions. Having good intentions isn't enough. Having a good heart that yearns for a better world is necessary, but it is not enough. Some actions perpetuate systems of oppression, while others participate in dismantling systems of oppression. And our intention is not what determines which is which. We need to trust people affected by these oppressions when they say which behaviors help dismantle and which behaviors strengthen those negative systems. We need to know what it means to be accountable. As parties to a covenant which includes the eighth principle, we can hold each other accountable, certainly. But this also refers to being accountable to partners for justice in affected communities and identities which are not within the boundaries of our congregation or of our denomination necessarily. We can't just take off on our own and trust that our good heart will guide us. without being accountable to affected communities. We must be aware that in a society with a history of white supremacy and other oppressive systems, pretty much everyone, maybe we can just say everyone, has internalized aspects of these oppressive systems, even if our heart is committed to getting rid of it. And since our institutions were not handed down pristine from on high, but were created by people trudging through the muck, all our systems, like all ourselves, have growth and revisions to accomplish before they lead us into beloved community. So how will the eighth principle inform my behavior? If we do it right, it will inform my behavior and ours together through our commitment to do this work in community, through our accountable promises to each other and our actions accountable to affected communities. This is not something we do alone. If it were, we wouldn't need to consider this principle. We would just study alone and in groups, make whatever we believe to be our best effort, but accountably, together, we promise to do our part as it emerges in accountable community, to get rid of ancient evils that have held down and harmed so many for so long. Amen, and blessed be.
I'm speaking to you today as a member of the Pledge Drive Task Force. The first point I'd like to make is to remind everyone of just how important our pledge drive is to our budget process. Last year, our pledges accounted for approximately 75% of our total operating budget that we adopted in June of 2020. This year, it will be even higher as our other sources of income, such as Sunday collection plate donations and the service auction, may be again impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic for a significant portion of the year. We also do not expect to get a forgivable PPP loan this year. We have to prepare the budget and decide which items we can afford to fund this spring. It has to be voted on by the annual meeting. The process has already started, but it cannot be completed until the pledge drive is completed and the results are tallied. The second point I'd like to make is that it is really important to mail your pledges in as soon as possible. As of February 24th, we've received only 24 pledges that total approximately $55,000. So we have a long way to go to reach our goal of $145,000. Now, we'd all like to blame the slow response on the U.S. Post Office, but I suspect we have some procrastinators in our group. So please, mail your pledge to the fellowship as soon as possible so we can complete the budget process. Thank you.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice filled by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
As we leave this time together virtually, may we remember those who have died in our current pandemic and those who struggle for their health and well-being because of the pandemic. May we commit accountably to do our part to build beloved community, and may the love we aspire to become evident in all we do. Amen, and blessed be.